Run with the Wind is one of my favorite sports anime, and it inspired me to run my first marathon. I think it's a pretty underrated show that's worth checking out, or if you're a runner who's not necessarily into anime, this could be a good point of entry into the medium. As a genre, sports anime are some of my favorite shows, but honestly, none of them are super relatable to me because, well, I have the hand-eye coordination of a goldfish. But that said, I am a decently capable distance runner. So when I stumbled upon Run with the Wind, it clicked immediately. A sports anime by Production IG about the one sport I actually do? With a soundtrack by Yuki Hayashi? It's a match made in heaven. The premise of the show is Kakeru Kurahara, a first-year at Kansei University, is caught stealing food. After outrunning a convenience store clerk, Haiji, a fourth year at the same university, takes notice of him and asks him the fateful question, and thus kicks off a series of events in which Kakeru, broke, basically gets a free room at the university dorm thanks to Haiji. Flexible payments on low rent and meals included. What more can you ask for? But of course, there's a catch. This dorm actually belongs to Kansei's athletics team, and staying there means that one is automatically enrolled into the club. And so the boys staying here basically got baited into running the Hakone Ekiden, a 10-part round-trip relay race in which each man must run 20 kilometers on the hills surrounding Mount Fuji. Amateurs at first, they come together to form a capable team. Throughout the show, there are moments that every runner, competitive or otherwise, will appreciate. And while running isn't a terribly interesting sport to watch, the anime does serve as a good vehicle for the characters to develop, both on the track and off. By the show's conclusion, I was pretty hyped and made two fatal mistakes. The first is I have my credit card information memorized, and the second is I felt inspired to run a marathon and didn't sleep on the idea. It's an idea I've always toyed with but never really considered putting into action, and that should be a testament to Haiji's character. This man isn't even real, yet he influenced me to do this. My choice of race was the Beneva Mississauga Marathon, about 30 minutes drive west from Toronto. Not sponsored, it was literally just the first one available to me. So I had my motivation and locked into a race. But was I getting ahead of myself? With only 11 weeks to train, that would be cutting it close, as most plans recommend at least 18 weeks. Like some of the boys, I was feeling the time crunch, but that was the thing. I wasn't starting from zero. As a videographer, I spend a lot of time on my feet, and running has definitely helped my endurance on very long shoot days. And so I've been casually running for the past 4 years. For the runners in the audience, to put into perspective, here are my PBs going into the race. My concern going into this was that I have to alter my schedule drastically. Currently, my weekly running schedule is mostly easy runs, with some fast runs, intervals for speed, and plyometrics for leg strength. According to my research, I was kind of already on the right track. Lucky that. So, off to the races, right? Well, not exactly. There were some things I needed to fix first. The first was, well, recovery. When it comes to running, rest is just as important as the workouts. The boys in the show struggled with this balance and even got in their own heads at times. I was no different, and I realized I wasn't doing enough to recover and lock in my gains. I could still feel the previous day's run, which isn't good. It meant my runs weren't as effective in increasing my overall fitness. So first thing I did was I bought an exercise bike so I could still get some cardio work done without stressing my joints. Running, sprinting, and jumping takes its toll on the joints, and having a cardio workout that has zero or little impact is massively helpful. Then I seriously looked at stretching. My minutes worth of half-assed static stretches clearly wasn't enough. The channel, Run Better with Ash, was massively helpful in this regard, and these 10-minute stretch routines were a game changer. Lastly, a 15-minute Epsom salt bath was a nice way to relax and loosen any remaining stiff muscles. Aside from recovery, race day considerations needed to be made, fueling being the biggest one. I'm going to be burning through an estimated 2,600 calories and outputting 1.5 liters of sweat. That's a lot of food and water to burn through. For the day of the race, this would be the ideal breakfast. A couple of peanut butter and jelly bagels, a cup of coffee, and some water. Any more than this and I'll be feeling way too full to properly run. Any less and I won't last. During the race itself though, all I'll have are these energy gels and whatever water the race organizers and volunteers put out. Super straightforward, right? Well, no, a lot of things started going wrong immediately, and it started with me trying the race day fueling strategy. Just got done with a 30-kilometer training run using nothing but these energy gels for fuel, and man, my stomach is just not having it. The last time I felt like this was when I got my wisdom teeth pulled and I couldn't have solid food. Now, hopefully my stomach will be able to deal with this when I try it again next week. But yeah, really glad I got ahead of this, because if I just rocked up on race day with nothing but these, probably wouldn't be able to finish. Then I had a sneaking suspicion that my treadmill might be lying to me. This being February and March in Canada, the weather's unpredictable as hell. I run outside when weather permits, but a treadmill's a safe bet for consistency's sake. But that's assuming the speed and distance readouts are accurate, and they were not accurate. In my own defense, when I bought this one, it was one of the cheapest on Amazon. I just didn't know how far I was gonna go with this whole running thing. To get to the bottom of this, I got a treadmill sensor. Basically, this links up with my watch and it tells me how fast I'm going and is much more reliable than using the watch's arm swing detection as a distance gauge. And yeah, while the treadmill speed readout was accurate with me off of it, it was up to 0.6 miles per hour slower when I was running on it, which kinda makes sense. Every time you take a step on a treadmill, you're momentarily touching the belt to the deck and slowing it ever so slightly. And you can't really calibrate a treadmill with a runner on there, since how much a treadmill slows is dependent on the runner's weight, cadence, and foot strike. And while this was all very scientifically illuminating, this meant months worth of training wasn't doing what I thought it was, and yeah, that kinda sucked. But it certainly wasn't time to panic and despair. Like Hikaru found out, if you get in your own head about this sort of thing too much and you start overworking, your times do get worse. And I was thankful that I watched this show because, well, there were actually quite a few times where having the show in mind was genuinely helpful. Like Shindo, I have a bad habit where I'll accidentally curve my chest outwards, and that makes it slightly harder to breathe, and that tension in the body makes my form less efficient. Another thing was, if I felt like I was too slow, then I'll push and stress myself to go faster, like Musa did when he was running his section of the Ekiden. Staying relaxed and taking it easy can and will make you go faster. And with these two tips, I actually beat my 10K personal best on a training day. But that's a small win. The real battle was yet to come. And before I knew it, 11 weeks of training had passed, and while it was good for the most part, there were certainly some days where I had to cut things short or compromise. No time to look back though, as it was time for the taper. Okay, I guess I should explain the taper. A taper is basically where you start training less and less progressively so that you can be fully rested and ready for race day. Apparently, it's not uncommon for runners to go stir crazy and train anyways, but this is the thing, the taper only works if you restrain yourself. And thankfully, I had this YouTube channel here to distract me, and this is why this video is a thing. The week before the race, it began to dawn on me what I signed up for. I was at work and got an email reminder from the race organizers. I don't know why, but that gave me a very real shot of adrenaline. It just made everything suddenly feel very real. But before the race even began, Mother Nature had something in store for me. Now, I've been pretty calm today throughout this entire process until now because I've been checking the weather, and yeah, there is a non-0% chance of rain on race day, and maybe a thunderstorm. Now, I've made my peace with running in the rain. I don't like the idea. I generally only train in dry conditions, but I'll do it if I have to. What I haven't made my peace with, however, is the possibility of that thunderstorm, and the race organizers would have to do the responsible thing in that scenario and pull the plug. Looking at my training calendar and seeing all the good days, the bad days, the in-between days, I'm really reluctant to give that up and have it be for nothing, basically. Yeah, just a lot of thoughts and emotions right now, but really, it's out of my hands. There's no sense in worrying. I gotta focus on what's in front of me, which is getting my race kit tomorrow. Alrighty, got my race kit, a bunch of goodies it looks like, but most importantly, my bib. I am number 625. To be honest, I don't know how this is going to hold up in the rain because this feels very papery. But yeah, I guess it's something to figure out for tomorrow. For this race, I'm aiming for a sub 4-hour finish, meaning a minimum pace of 5 minutes 30 seconds per kilometer, or 8 minutes 51 seconds per mile. which isn't blisteringly fast, but it should be more than enough to count for slowdowns, fueling, and maybe a washroom break. Now, I'm fairly sure I could be more aggressive with the pace, but this was my first marathon after all, so just finishing would be an accomplishment in and of itself. With breakfast down and a brisk morning drive to calm my nerves, I was ready to start running. And thankfully, it wasn't raining. But there were a couple of wrinkles to this. With a low of 17 degrees Celsius and 88% humidity, it was much hotter and more humid than anticipated. Also, there'd be heavy rain in 3.5 hours from start time, meaning I could choose to either get rained on or push to finish faster than intended. Either of these options would be a gamble, but I opted for the latter. And how did it go? Well... Okay, pardon the quality here. I am so tired right now, and I walked through like 10 minutes worth of rain. Neither of these things are conducive to camera work. But anyways, reflecting on this right now in the moment, running a marathon because of anime is an insane person's thing to do, which is why I did it. But after 11 weeks of hard training, I can attest to the fact that it does indeed work because we got the W. Or gets us an M, really. Right. Back to Studio Me for the outro because I need to get some carbs right now. With an official time of 3 hours, 41 minutes and 30 seconds and a chip time of 3 hours, 38 minutes and 43 seconds, that was a monumental undertaking. I want to say it was hard, and it was, but it felt kind of easy. Everything went like clockwork and all the training paid off, but there were a few moments that did throw me off. At the start of the race, I was desperately searching for ways to overtake. The half marathon and marathon runners were all together, so it was rather crowded. I'd pay for these little bursts of speed later on, but it was that or get stuck. Then I wasn't ready for the water to be that cold. I nearly choked on the first cup. Thankfully, the photographer didn't get that. Then the road's camber was something I wasn't quite prepared for. That's the curve it has for drainage. I usually run on flat sidewalks, and that curve was causing a bit of stiffness in my right side. But that was a minor annoyance, and once the pack thinned out, I was locked in, and that was it. I even had plenty of energy left over when I got to the 35-kilometer mark. This was further than I've ever ran, and everything beyond was uncharted territory. But still, I felt I could turn it on. So I put on a bit of a show for the crowd and ramped my pace up for the last 4 kilometers. Now, I would have liked to have done a final pace of 4 minutes per kilometer, but thanks to that overtaking early on, I really couldn't. A jolt of pain in my right leg, not unlike Haiji's, put an end to that idea. That said, it was still fast enough to overtake quite a few fellow runners, and when I rounded the final corner, there was no one in front of me, and I don't think there was anyone behind me. But in that moment, I got a glimpse at what a winner's finish could look like. And that was pretty awesome. All eyes were on me, and unmistakably the volunteers there could only be cheering for one person. And now that I said that out loud, my social anxiety is kicking me retroactively. But I stormed across the finish line, and one of the volunteers put the medal over my head. The number one question my family and friends had for me afterwards was, would you do it again? And well, the Toronto Waterfront Marathon is in 6 months, but for now, this was how Run with the Wind convinced me to run a marathon.